I think when it comes to Japanese horror, there is no image more iconic than Sadako emerging from the TV. For today's Western audiences, Ring is ground zero for any appreciation or exploration of modern Asian horror films. Ring was the first Japanese horror film for many Western audiences, causing the mere mention of Japanese horror to be associated with ghosts with long black hair in a white kimono, all thanks to Ring's seminal finale. And if you happened to catch Ring several years ago on Channel 4, you will have had the finale ruined for you in Mark Kermode's introduction, for which I will never forgive.
And the sequence in which an unstoppable evil literally crawls out of the television set will, I guarantee, scare the shit out of you.
I'm just kidding. I love you, Mark Kermode. He is my beau, and I think he's wonderful and terrific, and we all make mistakes, and it's fine. Before we get into everything, I need to explain first that I am not Japanese. Obviously. This analysis is from a Western perspective with a vastly different culture and history, so whilst I can give relevant information on the things I've read, what makes this scene so effective is that cultural and contextual detachment. That lack of knowing, of understanding, in other words, the fear of the unknown, as we've come to understand it. But let's explore that first without getting into the culture. That phrase is often misused by suggesting that simply not seeing anything is inherently scary. Because by simply showing nothing, then there is nothing to be afraid of. A more accurate phrase, as you can probably guess from the title of this video, would be fear of the implied, because the scary thing in a scene isn't what you're not seeing, it's what's not shown but is implied. Sadako was thrown down a well where her hatred, anger, and fear grew into a curse. When the phone rings, we hear that repulsive sound. Our first implication. A sound that we all share a common hatred and understanding of, but more distorted and ethereal. As Sadako relentlessly pulls herself out of the TV and onto the floor, there is a close-up of her fingers. Now we have context for the sound on the phone. What I'm getting at here is that we don't need to see Sadako crawling her way out of the well, because we have the images, we have the sounds to imply. That tangible, repulsive sensation of someone so desperate to escape, or so hatefully determined to kill, that her nails were ripped away from climbing up the well. And not seeing it, but having that idea, the implication, makes that realization far more uncomfortable. But the fingernails are tactile, they're tangible. It's a sensation we fear, but also understand and relate to. Sadako the person, the poor girl who was beaten and left alone to die, we can understand and even sympathize with. Sadako the ghost, the vengeful spirit, the Yurei, is unknown. What is her curse? Can it be stopped? What happens to those who are taken as their faces are held in a single frame of terror captured in negative film stock? The curse never could have been lifted by restoring Sadako symbolically to the human community by means of a proper burial, because she was not herself human to begin with, and her ultimate motivation was never, therefore, humanly intelligible. Fear of the unknown in this case is rather fear of what lies within the unknown when Sadako takes her victims. Though we never see Sadako kill, or attack, or take anyone directly, we just have their remains, their expressions of pure fear to imply what they experienced, as we are left to wonder. what are they afraid of? What are we afraid of? This is why I would argue that taking Ring as the first Japanese horror film that many Westerners ever saw, watching with that cultural ignorance enhances that panicked fear and confusion, because we don't understand Japanese ghosts. But if there really was something out there, there'd be a uniform standard. There isn't. As you said, ghosts in Japan are different. Her curse comes from the emotions of being outcast in a culture we aren't familiar with. Japanese beliefs of tales of vengeful spirits born from violent deaths don't work the same way here. On first viewing, Sadako is so foreign, both literally and metaphorically. We don't understand her, so we fear her. And this is true of how she is visually portrayed, a twisted version of something we understand becoming something more uncanny. Sadako crawls and stands and walks like a human being, but through the use of reverse photography, that ordinary movement becomes something far more distorted, unnatural and confusing. We recognize and understand the human characteristics, but we are made uncomfortable and repelled by the inhuman qualities within them. Often in fiction, a lack of eyes makes us afraid because there is nothing to connect with, nothing to empathize or even try to reason with. And this is true for Sadako initially, but what if we caught a glimpse of her eyes and the reality of the inhuman hatred behind that eye was far worse? It's these reasons why I think that Ring is so terrifying on its own terms, but the reason I think it resonated so strongly with Western audiences is because we hadn't seen anything like this before. No frame of reference. Our ghosts are different. So whilst Ring effortlessly plays off those fears of implication, it unintentionally found a way to recontextualize the fear of the unknown just by being distinctly Japanese.
最初に言い出したやつなんかいない。みんなが不安に思ったことがまさに、あるいはそうなってほしいって期待かな。